In 2007, the iPhone appeared and completely changed the world of technology. But by 2025, an unprecedented phenomenon is occurring in the US. Apple's sales are in constant decline. The rate of users switching from iPhone to Android is increasing the fastest in history, while satisfaction with iPhone has dropped to a record low. On the outside, everything still looks polished, but deep down, there's an unbelievable secret. Apple is losing itself. Internal Siri team reports that most AI features are not ready. Apple employees revealed that many of the WWDC 2024 demo segments were staged rather than running in real time. The market report indicates that the new iPhone has increased in price by 30–40% in 5 years, but the level of innovation is almost zero. And the biggest shock, Apple blocked a $10 billion AI chip purchase while spending over $77 billion to buy back shares in the same year. So where does the truth lie? This is no longer a story about a phone. This is an investigation into the rise and fall of Apple and why America is quietly turning its back on the iPhone. There's a truth few remember, but it's a crucial piece in understanding why America is turning its back on the iPhone today. There was a time when Apple made the whole world stand still. Don't say anything, not breathing, just looking. It was the era of magic, a period when each Apple product was not just technology, but a message. By the late 90s, Apple only had about 90 days left to survive. Imagine the world's most valuable company once teetered on the brink like an iPhone falling off a cliff, held only by a charging cable. Then the iMac appeared, color. Throughout, Congress. It's more like a piece of contemporary art than a computer, and it pulled Apple out of the emergency room. By 2001, the iPod was born, 1,000 songs in your pocket. A dry number, but at that moment it felt like holding the entire music library of your life in the palm of your hand for the first time. In 2007, the iPhone appeared like a meteor shower. It sent the entire mobile industry into a panic, half in amazement, half knowing they were finished. BlackBerry, Palm, Nokia. These seemingly immortal names lost their dominance in just a few years. Then in 2010, Apple continued to defy the laws of physics by creating the iPad, a device that sits between a phone and a computer, something no one thought they needed, until Apple created it. Steve Jobs didn't race for specs. Don't race for the number of cameras. He pursued experience, something intangible yet deeply felt by users. Apple events back then were like art performances. The audience stood up and applauded. Some people even shed tears. A new product appears not just to be used, but to make the world imagine a little more, dream a little further. That's a superpower that no tech company has been able to replicate. But the question arises, what happens when a company that once held the world in suspense begins to find itself breathless from creativity? What happens when artists become calculating businesses? We'll see that right in the next section, and that's when Apple's downward curve will begin to become apparent. If Apple's golden age was its brightest chapter, then 2011 was the straight line that divided history. A chapter ends, another chapter begins, and that new chapter brought with it changes that were quiet but stronger than any storm. On the day Jobs passed away, office buildings across the United States lit up the iconic bitten Apple logo. Not to mourn a CEO, but to remember someone who turned technology into emotion. Jobs was like a conductor. Every Apple product bore his mark. Bold, artistic, precise, and above all, putting people before spreadsheets. When he left, Apple lost its most important creative sensor. But what happened next was the real turning point. Cook is a supply chain master, the one who transformed Apple from a $300 billion company into one worth over $3 trillion. If Jobs was the composer of the symphony, then Cook was the one who kept the stage running smoothly down to the last detail. But a tech company can't survive on good operations forever. Apple is gradually shifting its focus from innovation to optimization, from technology to finance. Strategic meetings began to prioritize cost-effectiveness, long-term profitability, and incremental profit margins. Many engineers describe this phase as replacing the conductor with the chief accountant. A non-negative joke, it simply reflects the truth. What's being optimized is no longer the product, but sales. Creative personnel are gradually leaving. The role of design teams is shrinking, while the finance and marketing teams have more say. The moment that stunned the community, Johnny Ive left Apple, and a CFO from Boeing was invited to join the board. This isn't just a substitution. This is the company's DNA change. User comments began to appear as an early warning. Pro now means profit. Apple no longer has the soul of Jobs. That's not criticism, it's the sigh of those who once loved Apple the most. What happens to a company that once relied on innovation when the compass of creativity is gone? Is financial prioritization the starting point for the iPhone's downward curve? The answer will become clear as we move to the next section, the stage that truly began to turn America against the iPhone. There's a recurring truth in the comments we've gathered from the iPhone user community in the US. Apple won't collapse from a major shock. Apple collapsed due to hundreds of small but misguided decisions. Those decisions were as silent as cracks under the floorboards. No one noticed at first, but one day the whole house shook. First is the iPhone. For nearly 10 years, Americans have realized that the new iPhones are hardly any different from the old ones. Every year, the product launch follows a familiar formula, thinner than 0.2 millimeter. The camera is 17% better. Performance is a bit faster. That's not innovation. It's just a minor edit, like repainting an old house and calling it new architecture. One user left a very notable comment. The iPhone Air is like a folding phone, but it only folds in half. Behind the joke lies a truth. Apple is no longer leading in technology. They are following behind. While Samsung folds, unfolds, and stretches the future, Google turns the camera into an all-powerful AI. The iPhone remains stationary like a veteran athlete left behind on the track. And Americans see that very clearly. And then, the profit optimization strategy that once helped Apple reach the top began to backfire. A question many people ask: why does Apple increasingly make me feel overcalculated? Familiar examples abound. A $990 monitor stand. The wheel kit for the Mac Pro cost nearly $500. The Apple Pencil only works with a few models. It's like buying a key that only opens half the doors in your house. Accessories are broken down into multiple options, giving users the feeling of having a fragmented wallet. MBAs will call this a profit maximization strategy, but users call it something else: underestimated. And when users start to feel undervalued, that's when trust breaks down. The ecosystem was once Apple's secret weapon. Everything connects like magic. But when an ecosystem locks you in too tightly, it's no longer magic. It becomes limiting. The App Store maintains a 30% fee, which acts as an invisible tax. The EU was forced to intervene, with fines reaching $0.8 billion for platform policies. Many developers are leaving iOS to move to a more open environment. The most familiar image to visualize? The Apple ecosystem is now like a luxury apartment with too many locks. It's really beautiful, but it's too difficult to get in and out. Americans began to ask, why should I stay if I no longer feel free? And then, just as users were getting frustrated, competitors emerged. Prices rose continuously. The AI era arrived like a tsunami. So what has Apple prepared? Answer: very little, and that was the final straw that made Americans turn away. If hardware stagnation made Americans skeptical of Apple, AI was the fatal blow. The blow that caused a community once obsessed with iPhones to start leaving. What's scary here isn't that Apple is slow, but they were slow at the most important moment of the last 20 years. In 2022, the entire tech world was struck by a bolt from the blue. ChatGPT appeared. And then there's Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Meta Llama, and Samsung Galaxy AI. Companies are rushing to redefine the smartphone, transforming it into a thinking, supportive, and demand-predicting intelligent assistant. Meanwhile, Siri, the assistant launched in 2011, is still the same. One comment shared thousands of times bluntly stated, "I haven't used Siri even once in 10 years. Simply put, if other companies are driving self-driving electric cars, Siri is like an old-fashioned FM radio. It makes noise, but I don't understand what you want." And Americans began to ask, why does the most expensive phone have the least intelligent assistant? WWDC 2024. Apple announced Apple Intelligence, described as the new AI heart for the entire iPhone ecosystem. Users expect this to be the moment Apple returns to form, just like the day the iPhone was born. But behind the scenes, things weren't as smooth as they appeared on screen. Some experts revealed that the demo featured pre-rendered segments instead of running live. Many features promised for 2024 have been pushed back to 2025. Then it was moved to 2026. The new Siri, the version touted as groundbreaking, is not expected to be completed until at least 2027, according to multiple sources. To put it simply, Apple is selling movie tickets, while the script is still being written. The iPhone 16 is heavily promoted with AI, but when users bought it, they found Siri has a new interface, but its capabilities are still the same. Most AI features are locked and not yet functional. Some notification summary features were confusing, forcing Apple to suspend them. In the eyes of Americans, this is no longer a backward Apple, but Apple promised first and delivered later. Some typical comments show the level of frustration. If Steve were alive, he would change everything. Apple sells promises, not features. Galaxy AI is ready to use. Apple told me to wait 2 years. This is the most dangerous form of emotion for a brand, the feeling of betrayal. AI should have been the gateway to Apple's future. But in the US, it became the last straw, causing users to switch to Samsung, Pixel, and AI-first brands. So the big question for the next part is, what happens when AI competitors advance too quickly and Apple has to face the fact that they are no longer in the lead? If the previous parts showed Apple's internal decline, this is where that slide is most evident, right in their core market, the United States. And when we combine thousands of user comments, sales reports, and the reactions of the tech community, a clear picture emerged. Americans don't leave the iPhone for a reason. They left for 5 reasons at once, as if every tether that bound them was stretched too far and broke simultaneously. Young Americans once considered the iPhone a style icon, but by 2025, that cool factor had almost disappeared. Gen Z likes foldable smartphones, intuitive AI, and things that can transform or create content in seconds. Meanwhile, the iPhone is still a familiar rectangle, as regular as a photocopy machine's schedule. One user wrote, "In the middle of the dinner table, when you unfolded the Galaxy Fold, the whole group gasped. When you take out your iPhone, no one reacts." In American culture, cool isn't something that can be manufactured through marketing. It has to come from novelty. And Apple can't take that anymore. iPhones increase in price like the accelerator of a pickup truck, but innovation is as small as a drop of water. The price of iPhones has increased by 30–40% in a few years. The price of separate accessories is unusually high. The Pro Max versions are getting more expensive, but the differences are becoming less noticeable. Americans describe this experience as going to the supermarket, but every item has a small packaging fee added. It's not that it's expensive, it's that it doesn't feel worth it. The question many people ask, am I paying for innovation or am I paying for a logo? In America, everyone is talking about AI, and everyone can see clearly Google and Samsung are running. Apple is walking. While Galaxy AI translates conversations instantly, Pixel AI summarizes articles and edits photos in seconds. Siri is still struggling with simple questions. Apple Intelligence will have to wait from 2024 to 2027 to be finalized. For users, it's not a roadmap, it's a warning sign. They switched to Android not because they hated Apple, but because they want a smartphone that's smarter than them, not slower. In the past, every Apple event was a performance. And one more thing, it's the moment that makes people jump out of their seats. But in the last 5 to 7 years, that feeling has disappeared. Americans say Apple is maintaining its products, not creating the future anymore. An insightful comment from a user. Apple used to lead me to things I had never thought of. Now Apple is only directing me to next year's iPhone version. The Apple ecosystem used to be like an automatic door that opened as you approached. But now many Americans feel it's like an automatic door, but with too many sensors. The App Store is strict, high fees, difficult to convert. And when users feel held back, the natural reaction is to want to escape. So when Americans turn their backs, who is stepping up to replace them? Samsung, Google, or is a completely new generation of AI phones emerging? If you want to understand why Americans are abandoning the iPhone, look at what's rising to replace it. And this story isn't just about Android getting stronger, it's about the entire icon structure of the smartphone market changing. One of the most attention-grabbing moments on American social media in 2024-2025 was someone opening a Galaxy Fold 6 right in the middle of a coffee shop. Reaction around? Oh, curious, I'll jump up and take a look. What was once the iPhone effect of 2007 is now appearing at Samsung. The Galaxy Fold is not just a product, it's a statement. I use the newest, most different. The short videos went viral with the classic comment, I want to see their faces when I open this Fold 7. In American culture, this wow factor is valued more than specifications. And that's exactly what the iPhone no longer creates. And Pixel doesn't need a glamorous appearance. It wins on functionality. Instant article summarization. Translate the conversation in real time. Edit photos as if you have a post-production team right in your pocket. Suggest email, message, and appointment responses. All activities start right from day one. No need to wait until next year. For busy Americans, Pixel becomes a mini personal assistant. This feeling is completely different from Siri, which often makes users repeat their questions as if talking to an old machine. When technology makes you faster, you stick with it. When technology slows you down, you leave it behind. From market observations and retail data to user comments, a clear trend emerges. Symbolism is shifting from the iPhone being about status to the AI phone being about the future. Samsung leads in new design. Google leads in practical AI. Both created double pressure on Apple, and Americans began to move with that wave. If the competition is accelerating so rapidly, will Apple have enough time to catch up? Or is the smartphone market about to see a change in leadership for the first time in nearly 20 years? When we look at Apple in 2025, we are witnessing a strange paradox. It is a company so powerful it seems unbeatable, yet also so fragile that it could slide into decline with just one wrong decision. That paradox is like a giant ship. The steel hull is still shiny, but inside are bolts that have begun to loosen. It's important to be clear. Apple has never been weak. Their ecosystem remains a rare, synchronized machine in the tech world. iMessage is still an American specialty. MacBook still leads in stability. AirPods are still a style icon. The Apple One service generates revenue as steadily as a flowing stream. Apple's brand remains as strong as a skyscraper. It may shake, but it's very difficult to topple. And this is why many experts believe Apple still has time to turn things around. But the decisive factor lies in the future, not the past. The data we collected shows that Americans are not abandoning the iPhone because they hate Apple. They left because they wanted an Apple like the old days, creative, bold, and leading. So what would a reborn Apple look like? Siri is truly intelligent now. It's not an interface version, but a version that can compete with Google Gemini or Samsung Galaxy AI. A new product philosophy. It's not about revenue optimization, but rather returning to the think different spirit, creating something users don't yet know they need. Restructure internal culture, putting design and R&D teams back at the center instead of letting finance dictate every product decision. In other words, Apple needs to rediscover the creative compass they lost for a long time. So is there still hope for Apple? Yes, and a lot, but that hope doesn't come from how strong they are in the rankings. It comes from users still wanting to love Apple. They just need a new reason. So in your opinion, what would be strong enough to bring Americans back? A foldable iPhone? A new Siri? Or a technology that has never existed? To answer the question of whether Apple still has hope, we must look back at what made them great in the first place. And that's what the final part is about. A conclusion for a legend. To answer the question of whether Apple still has hope, we must look back at what made them great in the first place. And that's what the final part is about, a conclusion for a legend.